Good morning, everyone. In continuing with our introduction of candidates for this year's election, we have in studio with us Dennis Hannon, who's a candidate for Congress running in the New York 26th Congressional District. This would be the congressional district that Tim Kennedy holds at the present time. And so Dennis is here in studio, so is his son is with him, and there's going to be a very interesting story about his situation. And we also have with us Nancy Orticelli, who's on the Erie County Conservative Board and is the president of the Western New York Constitutional Coalition. So again, an interesting show today, spotlighting a very, very interesting candidate and a candidate for Congress. So welcome, Dennis.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So you've got a very interesting backstory, which I want to get to, but you're running for Congress. So what motivated you to get into running for the 26th Congressional District?
So I think it all started very early on. You know, I worked blue collar in my father's construction business, and he taught me a few things growing up. You work hard, you support your family, and nobody's going to save you. Actually, I think the way he put it was you hold one hand out and you put one hand under your butt and see which one fills up faster. I think that was actually the way he put it. But, I learned a strong work ethic from him, and really that became more real for me. And I think politics became less theoretical and more personal when I had a child. I had a family of my own, and I watched powerful institutions push my child towards irreversible medical decisions that no child should be rushed into. And I realized very, very early on the role that politics plays in our daily lives. I learned that you have to be willing to stand up, you have to be willing to speak up, and you have to be willing to fight. Nobody else is going to fight for your family.
One of the things, your quotes that I've read that impressed me a great deal is that hope is not a strategy. You have to stand up, you have to speak up, you have to be willing to fight. Those are very motivating words and so very true. And that's what's brought you to this situation, right?
Yes.
And so I see what your priorities are. So let's talk about your priorities. Safer communities. So break that down for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So safer communities. Everybody wants to feel safe when they leave their home, whether they're in the community. I think that we need to support law enforcement, more importantly, federal law enforcement cooperation with local law enforcement. We need these agencies to be communicating and working with each other in lockstep. Dangerous things happen when the left hand isn't speaking to the right hand, and at the end of the day, all of these agencies have a very important job to do, a dangerous one at that, and that is to protect the community. So that's first and foremost. Obviously, we need to enforce immigration and border protection policies. We need to focus on threats that are a serious public safety risk to our communities. With immigration policy and enforcement comes strengthening workplace compliance. We need to make sure that there's lawful hiring practices with these local businesses, not just for the community, but for the people that these businesses serve. So I don't just want to disrupt drug trafficking networks. I want to end them entirely. That's a huge focus of mine. There's too much poison on the streets that targets our loved ones and youngsters. So that's important to me as well. I think we all know people that have succumbed to addiction, and so that's a top priority. But more importantly, we need to strengthen initiatives that support father engagement and childhood involvement. We know the impact that fathers make on children's lives, and we also know the statistics of men who have been incarcerated and what percentage of them have grown up in fatherless homes. I think it's actually over 80%. So that's huge. Never underestimate the importance of a father in the home.
And we're going to get to that backstory because that obviously is a great motivation for you. But again, on your priorities, so lower costs, affordability is the word that's been used over and over and over again. It's interesting to me that Kathy Hochul can crisscross this state to talk about affordability when Kathy Hochul is the person who's created the unaffordability here in New York State, but she is a good retail politician. She'll go anywhere, and she'll talk about affordability like she's a champion of it. But you are, right? So lower costs. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think, and I've spoke to a lot of families throughout this district, and they all want the same basic things. They want to be able to afford the necessities. They want to be able to pay their bills. And you raised a great point, because I think it's very interesting how politicians will go up to the podium right before election, and they promise to deliver affordability, and they promise to be the solution to the problems that they create. So I don't believe in taxpayer-funded handouts. I do believe in offering tax rebates to struggling working-class families as a form of relief. I'm all for lower prescription drug costs, especially to seniors. I support cures, not profits. And I think that we need to prohibit the state and local governments from banning or limiting specific energy sources. Nobody should be in the business of telling you how you're going to heat your home or power your car. I will not do that, especially in Buffalo. If you want to let your car warm up for an extra 20 minutes because it's negative 5 degrees out, you should have the right to do so. And it's appalling to me that not only we have politicians that want to dictate how you're going to do these things, but they expect you to subsidize the cost for infrastructure to do it.
It's incredible, again, to me, the energy crisis in New York, trying to make us all have electric homes. She's put it off now, but that's all she's done, is she's paused it because it's an election year. But what they want, what the far liberal left wants, is to eliminate gas, the use of gas for our home heatings, which we know the disaster that can bring about. Also, the cost of electric has gone up. It's skyrocketed. Anybody that gets their electric bill and really looks at it, besides being shocked by the number, can see that you're not, again, paying for the gas itself. You're paying for certain other things that the government has put onto that bill, so that eventually we do not allow anything but electric homes. Crazy, right?
It is crazy. Forced electrification. And look, I am not opposed to people that choose to use electric appliances or want to use electric vehicles. I'm not opposed to that. What I am for is the freedom to choose, the ability to choose. And I think electric could be wonderful. I just don't think that the infrastructure is there yet to support the demand and the needs of people. So that's exactly right. You obviously should have the right to choose. We sit in a state that has an amazing amount of supply of natural gas that we do not tap into, we do not use. Pennsylvania is profiting from it, but not New York. It just is incredible that they can go out and champion, or say they're championing, affordability, when, again, they are creating the situation of unaffordability. The budget in New York, not finalized yet, but Kathy Hochul's proposed budget, $260 billion, when Florida's budget, with 25 million people, way more people than we have in New York, is $120 billion. So we are more than twice that of Florida's. Florida does not have an income tax. Florida does not have an estate tax. New York just keeps on taking money from its residents to the point where so many people have left this state. Affordability, that's the key word. Affordability and safety seems to be the issues this year. Absolutely.
So another important thing to you is protecting children. And so tell us about that.
Yeah, we live in the day and age of AI, which is this, what's promised to be this wonderful tool that's going to revolutionize how we work, our daily lives and the impact, but yet not a single person who works on AI or that's responsible for providing those AI services can tell you how it works, right? That's a concern. because how can we even begin to have safeguards to protect people from the content generated from AI if we don't even understand how it works or how it comes to certain conclusions or answers? So we see children that are targeted all the time with marketing, advertisements, that kind of thing. What I'm focused on with AI is providing safeguards to protect against content generation that involves kids, but then AI that is used to target children. So it's twofold. We need those safeguards in place. We need to have some kind of controls and checks and balances so that this wonderful thing that's supposed to improve our lives doesn't run amok and doesn't actually cause harm.
Now, you're running in a district that is substantially, the numbers are against you.
Yes.
So you know this is an uphill battle, but you want to get your word out. You want to give people an alternative. So many things need to be changed. But one thing that I'm impressed about with you is that you're not in this terribly bifurcated situation of one side hates the other side. You want to work across the aisle. You want to try to bring people together. That's something we've lost over a long period of time now. So, how do you think you can accomplish that in this day and age when people hate each other over politics? We are so bifurcated.
Yeah, it divides families. I mean, nowadays, right, you have Thanksgiving, these holidays with your family, and it's like a taboo subject that nobody's allowed to talk about. What I will say is that the things that I'm talking about here right now are things that I talk about at the dinner table with my family, these conversations that we're having right now. And I think that we need to be willing to have these difficult discussions, and it's okay that we may not agree with each other. And my role as a congressman isn't just to represent people or speak to people in an echo chamber. I'm going to represent people that also disagree with me. And that's okay, but it's going to be my role to hear them out, hear their points, and be the best representative that I can possibly be with them. But it all starts with talking. We need to be willing to have these conversations, talk about the issues that matter most. And to your point, a lot of these things have become politicized, but at the same time, they are 80-20 issues that 80% of the people can agree on. If you put the politics to the side, 80% of the people want safer streets or feel like they're not safe on the street. 80% of the people don't believe that biological men should be in women's sports. 80% of the people want the Save America Act. They believe that we should have verified voter ID to choose the next leader in this nation, or even local elections. So these are all things that unfortunately have become politicized, but they are all things that the majority of us can agree on, and I look forward to working across the aisle so that we can do that.
Again, we're here in studio with Dennis Hannon, his son, and Nancy Orticelli. So, Dennis, we're talking about your run for Congress and why you want to run, what you want to accomplish. But again, as I said, you're not the one side versus the other side type of politician. No. And those things that you mentioned that most of us are looking for, you're a guy who wants to talk to your constituents as opposed to just talking to your party or just being directed by your party. You want to accomplish what your constituents want, which to me are the typical things we all want, which we don't really have today. That's an interesting aspect. So have you talked to a number of people? Have you tried to go out and talk to constituents? I mean, a congressional district's a huge district.
Yeah, I've been getting more actively involved in the community. Obviously, during petition season, we're just trying to get qualified for the ballot. We just had our initial campaign kickoff press conference, and I just had the pleasure of being a part of the grand opening for a local business in Cheektowaga run by Bengali immigrants who came here. They did things the right way, and they have endless opportunities open and available to them for their family, and hopefully that business will be passed down through generations. So I'm not only just speaking to individuals, but I'm also speaking to business owners, understanding their needs, where their pain points are. how I can better support their business as a congressman and what they'd like to see from their representatives. So I am willing to sit with anybody for coffee. I look forward to having meet and greets on my website, HANNONforcongress.com. You can actually book an event with me. And, whether it's a church group or a place of business or just like a town hall style meeting, I am willing to sit down and meet with anybody and listen to the issues that matter most to them.
That was another thing that I saw on your website, that if you can get a few people together and you want to have you come, they can contact you. You'll go there. You'll talk to people. That isn't the typical politician today.
No, it's not. And I was actually very surprised. That was an idea that I had. And so I started looking at some other candidate websites, and I'm like, why is nobody doing this? Now, I'm also a computer nerd, so I have the resources and capabilities to do that. And for me, that was a no-brainer, was to offer that. Because I cannot reach out to every single person. It's just unrealistic to try to set up those meetings myself. So I at least want to have a channel so that people can reach me if they are interested in hosting a meet and greet.
So tell us again what that website is so that people can go there if they choose.
Sure. HANNONforcongress.com.
Okay, so it's Hannon, HANNONFOR.
Yep, correct.
Congress.com?
Correct.
Okay. And so they can go on that website. Of course, if they Google you, Dennis Hannon, they're going to be able to see that website pop up. But all of what we're talking about today, a lot of that is on your website, what your goals are, what your intentions are, who you are, what your background is. That's a good way to learn about you and to get involved. Getting involved is another thing that is more difficult today because, in my opinion, having been in this now for 4 decades or more, it was so different at the beginning when I got involved. People thought of this as public service. Mm-hmm. They respected their politicians. They respected police officers. They respected elected officials. We don't see a lot of that anymore. Today, in my opinion, a lot of people turn away from politics because in political advertising, each side is calling the other side bad. So there's so much of that negativity that I think it turns people off. But like you said, what people want to do, and I go back to what you said, hope is not a strategy. You have to stand up. You have to speak up. You have to be willing to fight. You're running because too many families across Western New York and doing everything right and still feel ignored. They work hard. They pay more. They worry more, and they get less. That, unfortunately, is what's going on today. That's your quote, but that is what's going on today, right?
It is. It is. I feel it with my family. I wouldn't have been inspired to step up to the plate if I thought everything was fine. I'm doing this. It's my family who has to walk through the fire with me as well, and I'm doing this because I want a better future for my family and my son's children someday.
So, again, going about this is not going to be simple. It's giving people an alternative. It's putting yourself out there. So here we are, the middle of April, and election is not till November. So you're going to be on a mission from now till then to put yourself out, engage people, talk to people, and try to convince people that you're the better choice.
Yes, and you know what? Regardless of what happens in November, I am never going to stop fighting for the families in this district, and I'm never going to stop fighting for the families, the citizens of this country, because I love this country. This is home for me. I'm Buffalo born and raised. And what kind of man would I be if I just stopped fighting after November? The only thing that might change is what that fight looks like. The landscape of battle is going to evolve in November. How that evolves, it's in God's hands, and I'm just a passenger, and I'm here for whatever He has planned for me.
So I know the Republican Party has reached out to you because they heard you in Cheektowaga. You went to the town board. You addressed the town board. So you're not afraid of going out into a public forum and speaking what I believe is the truth, what I believe people want to hear, but what too many politicians kind of put aside. So it's a very interesting race, even though it's a very difficult race. Like you said, no matter what happens in the election, I think you're committed to being part now of the public service situation, which I think benefits us all. I want to start talking about the situation that you had to go through, a difficult situation for your son. So kind of bring us to the beginning and tell us how that unfolded.
So when my son was approximately 3 to 5 years old, I was in the middle of a divorce, a nasty divorce, and I had received a letter in the mail addressed to the parent or guardian of, followed by a female name, and I thought that originally they mailed the letter to the wrong address, but it was from my son's school, so I opened it, and that was when I discovered that my son was socially transitioned without my knowledge, without asking if maybe I wanted to be a part of this, or even maybe wanted to know about it. And they had already assigned a female name, and they were referring to him exclusively as female pronouns.
That just blows my mind, and I mean, so many people listening are going to have a difficulty understanding that. But the school, without your knowledge, without your consent, the school allowed a transition to call him by a female name and to treat him as such.
Yeah, and it became normalized. So when I was picking my son up for my access, or when I was picking him up from school or what have you, he was a boy. And so my son was essentially living a double life. When he was with his mother, he was a girl. When he was with his father, he was a boy. And that became so normalized that my son didn't even think to tell me. I didn't see any clues, nothing telling. There were a few times when I got him and he might have been wearing, girl socks, and I really didn't think anything of it. I thought that, maybe that's all she had at the time. But it wasn't through court discovery that I had really realized the scope of this transition that was taking place, that took place before.
So your ex-wife never told you the situation at her house?
No.
And at her house, she allowed him to be, or treated him as if he were a girl.
Correct.
But at your house, he was the boy that you always knew.
Yeah. I had no reason to believe that he had any kind of sign of gender dysphoria or being uncomfortable in his body. And through, court records and subpoenas, I discovered that this happened when my son was approximately age 3 to 5. So I want the audience to take a step back and think about that. At 3 to 5 years old.
I just have a very difficult time dealing with that. In my law practice, I've seen this situation once or twice where a school was willing to make the change without parental consent. I don't know how that happens, how that could happen. I'm amazed that it would happen, but in your case, it did happen. I've seen it happen in one or two other cases. And so now you have to push back. You have to fight back, right?
Oh, absolutely. So what I discovered was that over 2 45-minute phone calls, they never met or spoke to my child. A endocrinologist determined that he could be a candidate for puberty blockers by the time he was age 9.
An endocrinologist,
Correct.
A doctor in this area, actually would say something like that for a child who is 5, 6 years old.
Correct, and they never met or spoke to the child at all.
So how do they come up with that then?
I don't know. They came up with it after speaking with my ex-wife. But I was never asked about this. I had no idea that even ever happened. It wasn't until court discovery that I had really discovered the extent of this. And it was mind-blowing to me. It was very hard for me to even comprehend or process that, because you got to figure this was like 7-8 years ago. People really didn't hear about this stuff happening. I had never heard of that happening before, so it was new to me. And I fought. and I fought, and I took the case all the way to the Supreme Court. I spent about 7 years and $100,000, $150,000.
So let's start again at the beginning. So the boy is 5 years old. You're getting a letter from the school. And what did that letter essentially say? How did you know?
I believe it was a report card.
Oh, okay.
Actually. So it was a report card that was mailed to me, and it's interesting because I got the report card after I reached out to the school because I wasn't receiving any notifications. And I had to reach out to them several times. And then when I finally did get a notification, the first one was his report card. And so I thought that there was a mix-up. But it was when I read the report card and I saw the comments from the teachers, and they were affirming this identity that was unknown to me.
So the report card was in a girl's name, not your son's name.
Correct.
And they were okay with that at school. They were affirming it. They were using female pronouns to address him.
Yes, correct.
5 years old.
5 to 6 years old, kindergarten age.
Oh, my God. And so what did you first do? How did this all start, the court stuff?
Well, first, I can't even begin to describe the amount of emotions that I felt. I felt angry. I felt betrayed. I felt like as a father, I was the last to know in something so important. And I had to fight things the legal way. I had to do things the right way, and that was through the court process. And then I discovered that he was going to a therapist between the ages of 3 to 5, and they were practicing social transitioning and gender affirming care. And that therapist also kept no notes of any visits whatsoever. And that same therapist was also disciplined for the treatment that involved my son. But I had to fight, and this took 7 years of fighting.
So the mother was willing to allow this?
Yes. They said that my child was consistent, insistent, and persistent on identifying as the opposite gender, and yet he never received a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. They had a treatment plan before they ever had a diagnosis.
Wow. So again, did you start in family court? What court did you start in?
I started in Niagara County Family Court, then it went to Erie County Family Court, and then it ultimately went to Erie County Supreme Court.
So what happened in family court? What was the petition that you brought? What was the judge's opinion? What happened there?
Ultimately, I was able to get temporary sole medical authority. She, along with the therapist and the school, were ordered not to refer to my son as any other name other than his birth name and use any other pronouns other than he, him. That was great because that stopped the influence, but it was a temporary order. That judge, I believe, it was transferred to Erie County because we moved, and then the original judge that we had resigned. She retired. And then it was basically bounced around.
We're here with a discussion with Dennis Hannon with a situation which is hard for me to accept or believe, but he went through it. His son, at the age of 3 to 5 years old, was being called a female name at school. The school allowed that. There was a divorce going on, and the mother allowed the boy to dress as a girl at home. He dressed as a boy when he was with the father, and she was sending him to counseling, right?
Correct.
At that young age.
At that young age.
How do they justify that someone at that age could make that type of decision? How I can't fathom that.
Well, yeah, because I mean, we're talking lifelong. What it leads to is lifelong irreversible consequences that usually progress onto puberty blockers or other kind of medical interventions. These are children that aren't old enough to get a tattoo. They can't make decisions on their own. Yet somehow we give them the power to make these choices. But what I can tell you is that it all starts with an adult telling them that it's possible to be born into the wrong body and you can choose the gender you want to be. That is ultimately the catalyst that starts all of this. Until you tell a child that, they would have no idea. They wouldn't even think it. It wouldn't even be a thought. That is the seed that has to be planted for this radical gender ideology to sprout.
Again, this is all inconceivable to me.
Can I say something, Ralph?
Yes,
for
go
people,
ahead, Nancy.
For people who are wondering how this can even happen, is this legal? Is this what's the legislature doing about this? This is not legislation from Albany. These decisions, these schools 100% have immunity towards any retribution because it is the State Department of Health and the State Board of Education that have put these regulations into place. Any school can do this to a child, and they are not required to inform either parent. And so if you're thinking this is legislation,
Yes.
it is not. It is the Department of Health and the Board of Education. Who puts those people on those boards? Ask yourself that. And if you want to change it, change that. The Department of Health and the Board of Education. It's not a law, but they have absolute immunity from any repercussions, these schools. It can happen to anybody, and you will never know about it.
I saw this once before with a woman who was divorced, and she had a son. I think he was 11 or 12 at the time, and the school was using female pronouns, and so the boy himself, for whatever reason, told the school, and the school, without the consent of the parent, the guardian, was changing it.
They can.
They can, and I have foiled records from several schools in this area, and all of the policies are boilerplate. They came from somewhere. They all say the same thing. They give the child the power to decide with whom, when, and how to share their gender identity, and they also keep 2 records on the child, one under their birth name, one under their chosen name. So if you were to request records, you may not even see it because you're not even requesting the records that would be pertinent to that under that name.
And I don't know that if people know this or if you know this, Ralph, but Dennis, I've known him for a few years now, and he's been in the public servant spotlight and arena even before this race. He was very, very proactive in trying to stop Proposal 1 on the ballot a couple years ago. And that's all encompassing in the same issue here where, it was about,
Girls
gender.
and
They
boys
said it
and
was,
girls sports.
They
that
said it was
type of thing.
about female reproductive rights, and it absolutely was not about abortion whatsoever. And Dennis was out speaking across the state at different churches, doing press conferences. So he's really, this is his heart, is to protect kids. And I don't think it gets any better than that for somebody running for office.
Well, when you have to go through what he went through, I can't fathom, I can't imagine what the emotions are when you're seeing your own child, a child that young, that, 3, 5, 7 years old, being treated in that fashion, being led to a decision that, if it ever had to be made, certainly should be made by an adult, not by a child of that age. And then the encouragement from the mother. And I suppose what really bothers me is the encouragement from medical professionals, so-called medical professionals, that would allow it. The school part, you've just articulated it. I can't imagine that they have the authority to do that. But
they don't have the medical authority for any medical transitioning, but as far as social transitioning, they have absolute authority. You can look it up, Department of Education and Department of Health.
And that's how it starts. Because in order to progress on to medical interventions, you have to meet the DSM-5 criteria for gender dysphoria. So with those conditions in that setting, they ultimately would. It would allow them to progress on to
so
surgery
what are the
or what have you.
conditions for gender dysphoria? There's no age. There's no. You have to be 18 to get tattooed. You have to be 18 to smoke. You have to have a more mature brain to make these kinds of decisions, and yet this can happen at 3 years old.
Well, that's the problem with gender as a thought, right? It's whenever you think that you're a different gender. There are no real strict safeguards. This is still new. We don't even understand the long-term impact of putting these children on endocrine disruptors, because that's what puberty blockers are. And we look at puberty like it's a problem when it's actually the solution. Look, these kids are confused. They're going through times and changes in their lives.
Right.
And for you to stop a natural cycle like that,
Right.
we all were confused when we were going through puberty.
Sure.
And guess what? We grew out of it. That is the goal. You grow out of it. You become an adult. And for us to stop that is just, it's crazy to me to think that is what we call care. We're finding out now that, it's not care. A lot of these countries are actually banning it. And we've seen studies come out like the CAS report or the World Professional Association of Transgender Health leaks, where they have no idea. They have no idea what they're doing. And they admit to it. It's all experimentation because it is not evidence-backed treatment.
So how prevalent is this, that this happens?
So when I first started speaking out about this, I felt both a sense of reassurance that I wasn't alone because I heard from other parents, but then I became terrified because I realized it was much more prevalent than I had ever expected, and that I wasn't the only one, and that there were other parents out there that, one, didn't have the resources or the money to fight it, but two, maybe they felt like they couldn't speak out. I mean, I was forced to resign from a very good job that I had at the time for coming out about this and just simply stating the truth. So I have met with several parents, and it's heartbreaking because their children weren't as fortunate. Not only did they spend everything that they have, but they have totally lost their children. I just did a story about a guy in Batavia. So that close. I mean, that's not far away. I've heard from grandparents that reach out to me, aunts, uncles that reach out to me, and they feel beside themselves because it's not just fighting it. It's when you come out and you start to question these things, you are labeled every name that you could think of. You're a bigot, you're a phobe, you're this, you're that. So a lot of the times people are afraid to speak out about it because they don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to damage relationships or their reputation in the community.
So, again, I had one other experience, like I said. I've heard about it in, one or two other situations. I had that one personal experience with a client of mine. A child who is somewhat older than your child, it just blows my mind that at 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years old, you could presume that the child knows what he wants to be or what he feels he is.
And think about this. This was 7 years ago that this happened.
Yeah.
This wasn't... we're like, oh my gosh, what's going on today?
I know.
This was 7 years ago. Imagine how much worse it is today.
Well, again, we all look at, what's being taught in schools today, what teachers look like, and what teachers are willing to, do in schools today. Many of us are against it. Many of us, want those schools to be back to, teaching, what we were taught. But that isn't what's happening in our schools. Now, is that the problem of local school districts? I mean, where he went to school, did you ever go to the Board of Education? Did you ever try to find out why they would be willing to allow this for a child of that age? Yeah,
so the first thing I did before I went public was I spoke with the superintendent.
Yeah.
And all I got was he was like a politician. It was just dancing around the point, and he assured me that legal was involved. And that seemed to be the only thing that he really cared about was that legal was involved.
Legal what? The school?
The school legal department was involved. But at the same time, he couldn't tell me if a therapist or a counselor at school was.
So, Nancy, you're saying that the Board of Education, the New York State Board of Education, sanctions this.
And the Department of Health together.
And the Department of Health. They
And
sanction it.
And the reason why you can't ask your school district to take a different stance is the school districts act like they're in charge of their own district, but they're not. They're run by the state. And what happens is if the school districts go against what the state says, that school district then risks losing any funding. So if that school district would have stood up for Dennis and said, you know what, we're not doing this, the state, they wouldn't get their funding. They're not willing. These individual school districts are not, except there's one in Pioneer School District has taken a stand against these kind of things, but that's a rural district. These city districts, they're not going to go against the state.
It's all about the money. That's it.
So you were able to get a court order that the school had to refer to him as his biological boy. You got that out of what court? Family court or Supreme Court?
Correct. I believe that was, and it's really tough for me to say because this was so long ago and there was a lot that transpired. But I believe that was in Erie County Family Court. If not, it was in the early stages of Supreme Court.
Okay, so it was a court order that obligated the school district to refer to him in his biological, as a boy.
Yeah.
So at least the judge had the willingness to do that.
Yes.
So I applaud that. Did the school district push back? Did they fight about it?
No, not at all. And it's funny because once they stopped doing that, all of a sudden, everybody that said that he was persistent, consistent, and insistent on being a girl, they all just kind of disappeared. We had therapists, after closed-door meetings with the judge. I wasn't involved in any of them. All of a sudden, therapists that were once a part of the case just kind of disappeared off into the sunset. They all kind of just scurried, even more so when I came out about it with the story.
All right, we're going to have to end this now. The story is amazing to me. The motivation is, at least it's motivating you to go out and try to help other people. The fact that your son had to go through that is a terrible set of circumstances. The fact that you had to go through it, that it cost you six-figure money to have to fight it, where a lot of people don't have that ability. All right, so anybody in that kind of situation certainly can reach out to you, but people in the 26th Congressional District certainly should reach out to you. Go to your website, find out who Dennis Hannon is, and hopefully go to the polls and vote in election and vote for a change. Thank you.